All right, let's talk about one of the most fundamental building blocks in all of JavaScript, objects. I mean it, pretty much everything you build in JS is going to involve objects, so really getting how they work is absolutely critical. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the why, like why do objects even exist? Then we'll get our hands dirty with creating and changing them. We'll look at the different ways to get data out of an object, and you'll definitely want to stick around to the end because we're going to break down a really common gotcha that'll save you hours of headaches down the road. So, first things first, why do we even need these things called objects? Well, let's get right to it with a simple question. Think about it. You're building, say, an online bookstore. A single book has a title, an author, a price, a page count. All these bits of information are related to one thing. How do you keep all that from just floating around in your code, creating a total mess? And boom, that's the solution, the JavaScript object. The best way to think about it is like a container, right? A digital box with perfectly labeled compartments inside. Each piece of data, like the title, gets its own label. We call that a key, and the data itself is the value. It's all about keeping related info bundled together, neat and tidy. Okay, so we've got our data organized in this neat little box, but what can we actually do with it? Well, objects aren't static. They're meant to be changed, and there are basically four main things you'll do all the time. You're pretty much always going to be doing one of these four things. In the developer world, you'll often hear this called CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. Let's see what that actually looks like with some code. Adding a brand new property is just ridiculously easy. If it doesn't exist, JavaScript just creates it for you on the fly. Just like that. And reading it back out? Yep, just as simple. You use that same dot notation to grab the value by its key. Now, here's what's cool. Updating a property uses the exact same syntax as creating one. If the key is already there, JavaScript doesn't complain. It just replaces the old value with the new one. And if you want to get rid of a property completely, you just use the delete keyword. Once you run this, it's like isAvailable was never even on the object to begin with. Gone. So that doc notation we've been using is great. It's clean, it's simple. But it has a sibling that's way more powerful, bracket notation. And knowing when to use each one, that's what really starts to separate basic code from truly flexible, dynamic code. Okay, so book.author, that's dot notation. It's awesome when you know the exact name of the property, and it's a simple name, no spaces or special characters. But then you have bracket notation, book bracket author. It looks a little different. You use square brackets, and the property name is a string inside quotes. You have to use this for keys with spaces, like release date, but honestly, its real power lies somewhere else entirely. And this right here, this is its superpower. You can stick a variable inside the brackets. Just imagine for a second that the property to get variable came from a user clicking a button on your website. You have no idea if they're going to want to see the price, the author, or the title. Bracket notation is what lets you write code that can handle all of those possibilities dynamically. It's a game changer. Okay, so we're good at grabbing one property at a time, but what if you need to do something with all of them? Like, say, display every single detail of a product on a web page. For that, we're going to need a loop. The for and loop is built for exactly this job. With each pass of the loop, that variable key will hold the name of the next property. So first it'll be title, then author, and so on. Then, inside the loop, we use that key variable with bracket notation, see book key, to pull out the value that goes with it. This is a perfect example of why that bracket notation is so crucial. But hold on, there's a really weird exception you gotta watch out for. You would think the loop would run in the same order you define the properties, right? Well, usually. But if your keys are strings that look like numbers, JavaScript throws a total curveball. It'll just ignore your original order and sort them numerically. It's a classic gotcha that can cause some really confusing bugs if you aren't ready for it. All right, let's slow down for a second because this next concept is, without a doubt, one of the most important and, confusing things for new JavaScript developers. It really changes how you think about passing objects around in your code, so let's break this down carefully. So first, let's look at simple things like numbers or strings. We call these primitives. When you copy a primitive, it's copied by value. The easiest way to think of this is like making a photocopy. The new variable, str2, gets a brand new, totally independent copy. If you go and change that copy, the original is completely untouched. Makes sense, right? Objects, however, are completely different. When you assign an object to a new variable, you are not making a photocopy. Not at all. Instead, you're just copying the address, the reference, to where the original object is sitting in memory. You're basically creating a second signpost that points to the exact same house. And this is the critical result. Because both variables, book 1 and book 2, are pointing to the very same object, if you make a change using one of them, it's visible through the other. Because there's only one object in memory. It just has two different names pointing at it. Okay, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. First, objects are all about grouping related data with key value pairs. Second, you can manage their properties using those 4 CRUD operations. Third, use dot notation when things are simple, but use bracket notation for its dynamic power. Fourth, the for-in loop is your go-to for iterating over all the properties. And finally, the big one, objects are copied by reference, not by value. And that leaves us with one final interesting question to chew on. If we now know that a simple equal sign doesn't actually copy an object, how would you do it? What techniques are out there in JavaScript to create a true structural clone, a completely new, separate object that has the same data but can be changed independently? Well, that's a great topic for another time.